Hello everybody, Dr. Jake Aleck from Aleck Pain to Performance. In this episode, we're going to be with Cam Galgano, owner of GPS Training, and we're going to talk all things sport-specific training. What the heck is it? Is it such a thing? And what sports does it actually pertain to?
Yeah.
So let's first start with, what is sport-specific training?
Yeah. So when I say sports-specific training, it's not like we're trying to, if you're a baseball player, we're not trying to grab a bat and perform, exercises. We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is basically just preparing for the demands of, that particular sport. The nice thing is, when it comes to most training, most of it is general. All athletes need to get strong. All of them need to get generally more powerful, get more explosive, get faster, whole 9 yards. That's all general. To where you have all these different, variances is, let's just take a baseball, softball player versus a football player or basketball player. Baseball, softball player, obviously, it's much more rotationally demanding. You're swinging, you're throwing. They're rotating a lot more than football players, basketball players, to where those athletes doing a lot more quick, rapid change of directions, cutting, decelerating. So with a baseball, softball player, we're obviously going to throw in more medicine ball throw variations. We have this new machine called the Proteus, which is super cool because it gives us more objective data and output on these different rotational, power exercises. So it's allowed us to make our training more specific to that particular athlete.
Yep.
Whereas with football players, basketball players, soccer players, they get their general work done in the weight room, but we want to take the forces and the strengths that we developed in there, and when we go out to the turf, we're working on cutting, decelerating, rapidly changing direction a little bit more than that baseball, softball player. So it's those little things that I would say make up the sport-specific training element for these athletes.
Okay, so would you agree when it comes into like how we talked about with strength training, speed training, strength is the foundation to getting faster. Would you say that still push, pull, carry, core, bend, all of those foundational patterns of movement are still the foundation to all sports training?
100%. If you get stronger and all those big rock movements, you're going to be set up and you're going to have such a great foundation where the actual sport-specific training things that we incorporate, such as like the Proteus, such as all these different speed training elements, you're actually going to really reap the benefit from those. And I actually always say the easiest thing when it comes to coaching and implementing more sport-specific, more advanced things is when an athlete is already athletic.
Yeah.
Because it makes things so much easier. When you can move better, when you already have that strength base, sure, maybe some of these things, there might be a little bit of a learning curve, but once you hit that curve, it's that much easier. So that truly is, and that kind of goes back to developing a super basic but a super high quality training program, maybe for these younger athletes, because it sets them up to where they can actually reap the benefit of the sport-specific training.
And what I see in here is sometimes parents or families get so into the nitty-gritty with the small stuff, but they're missing the big picture of, let's just get this person hinging, let's get this person lunging, let's get them squatting. Do that stuff for like a year or 2 years, then let them play the sport, because then sport is essentially sport-specific training.
Yeah, exactly.
And then maybe as they get older, you can get into those fine minutia of stuff.
For sure. Like when you mentioned hinging, for example, on that Proteus or with a medicine ball throw, if you can't hinge at your hips, you're never going to be able to throw the ball or produce as much power on that machine as possible, because you're not going to be able to develop power throughout your hips. So that's where, kids come in and see you actually learning the very basic primal movement pattern of hinging.
It's crucial.
That's way more important.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't look cool on video or on social media, right? Because we always use that term because people always will say, oh, look at what they're doing over here. It's like, yeah, but you can't do that yet.
Exactly.
So, and we always use the term of you can't move where you can't move. So if you can't have someone, or if someone's just position or body awareness, like they're just not used to moving somewhere, get good at doing that with just body weight, and then start doing it into the gym environment where you can actually, add some load to it.
Exactly. And I feel like from a sport coach's perspective too, like say I'll go back to baseball, for instance, there might be a certain technique you want to learn, if you're a pitcher on the mound. But if you can't get into that position, you can't do that technique. So it's like you got to kind of break it back down, go back to the basics. Okay, I got to learn how to hinge at my hip, or I need to learn how to better decelerate at my front leg if I ultimately want to use this technique to help me throw harder. So everything goes full circle.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the sports individually. What we think more sports specific, let's talk rotational sports. What are our main rotational sports that we see that need to train rotation more than other sports?
Yeah, I'd definitely say, baseball, softball, because obviously you have throwing's rotational, hitting's rotational. Even when you're, you drop step in to go maybe try down fly ball, very rotational. Hockey, tennis. And honestly, there are rotational, golf too, for all of our golfers out there. It continues to get bigger and bigger. I'd say those are like the main rotational sports because of the swinging and throwing elements. But I mean, there are rotational elements in every sport, but I'd say those are our main ones that, hey, if our bread and butter is being able to, swing harder and faster or throw harder and faster, you got to be training that element.
Okay, so I'm curious on your aspect of this. Where do you see, and this is more depending on which avenue you look into, a lot of times if you're a right-hander, there's some people saying that you should be able to swing right and left side, whether you're a golfer or batter, to get train both sides. What's your view on that?
I just look at it from a balance perspective, honestly. It's like, okay, I'm not expecting you, let's just take a medicine ball throw. I'm not expecting you to be able to throw as hard if you're a righty, on your left side. But what I do expect, though, is you to be able to do it and for you not to look like a fool doing it.
Yeah.
I just look at that as, one, you're preventing, drastic imbalances between your right and your left side. And obviously, it's like that's not good.
Right.
But two, it's just general athleticism. Like you should be able to do a very basic movement like that on both sides. Because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, say you're in the outfield as a baseball player or whatever, you're gonna have to open up to your left and your right, okay? You gotta be able to do both. It's just being a well-rounded athlete. That's how I look at that.
And from my view of things, I see like the almost first step into training rotational sport is just by them doing single arm things. Like even you could be doing a single arm row or a single arm bench press, and you're essentially training the sling of motion that, hey, if we ever did add that true rotation into it, this is like almost the start to it, right? Because anytime you do one arm at a time, you'll feel definitely one side working more than the other. But if you do one arm press this way and you have to drop down 15 pounds to do it on the other arm to match the reps,
that's huge.
I mean, that's just a shining light saying we probably should be evening ourselves out a little bit. Right?
And what's nice is, too, I mean, definitely from your end, too, if you're seeing okay, if you go at a general assessment, if somebody can't move at their hip, you're going to know stressors are placed, whatever. Could be at their low back, whatever. So we found, especially from learning from you, if I know that I'm, kids doing a 90-90 hip flow or whatever, and their hips, they just can't move, I know that if that athlete has low back problems, for instance, I can maybe guess, okay, maybe it's coming from the hips, or if they can't move from their upper back, maybe it's coming from there. So taking the baseline, movement capabilities that we were talking about can kind of allow me to be like, oh, okay, something's not right here. Let's kind of strip it down and let's maybe dumb down this movement, work on that so we can ultimately get better at that, rotational pattern.
Totally agree. And I think that's where really good clinic care and gym care meld the best in those because again, throwing, golfing, swinging, you're doing thousands of reps into one type of way.
Yeah.
It's no different than a runner who's running for a marathon or just gets a lot of miles in throughout the week. If they have one wrong thing going on with their right ankle, every rep that they run, it's going to be a tick into something's going to be compensating.
Yeah, for sure.
So if I have something wrong with one of my hips and I'm always rotating into that hip, something's going to go down to shame to say, we can't take anymore. So that's when having the assessment of how someone moves, but also where's their strength at too, with imbalances, it's all a great collection to say, these are all parts to the pudding, right?
Yep, exactly.
So, all right, cool. So when it comes into the summary, I think here it's one, strength in normal movement patterns is the base for sports-specific training.
Sure.
So we can traditionally get that done in almost like a group-based training, right? And then as we age on and get a little bit more, into the nitty-gritty of things, you mentioned soccer, golf, tennis, baseball. Which other ones?
Oh, is it hockey?
Hockey. Those were all main sports that we turn a little bit or rotate more. So those are ones that you can use some really cool gizmos like the Proteus at GPS where, I mean, it's giving you numbers.
Exactly. And that goes back to the whole competitive aspect of things, to where if you're getting that feedback and you're with somebody, you're going to want to try and, top their score. So it makes it super, cool. And obviously, in order to develop maximum power, we need to be able to give maximum time with each and every rep. So it's helped out a ton.
Perfect. So in the end, we got to make sure that people are learning how to move. You get strong in the foundational things, and then you can worry about the sport-specific things. Definitely not the vice versa.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Cam Galgano, GPS training.